So now we will talk about the coronary arteries. So today we will talk about the coronary arteries. So what are coronary arteries? Coronary arteries are basically those arteries which supply the heart itself. So as you know, like every organ in your body needs oxygen supply to survive. So the heart pumps oxygenated blood to every other organ, but the heart is also an organ, right? So it also needs oxygenated blood. So these are the arteries, these are really important. These are the arteries that supply oxygenated blood to the heart itself. So these are really important arteries, and I'll talk about why they are important a moment later. So let's learn what are the coronary arteries, what are the branches, and everything about these. So let me draw the heart first. So this is your typical heart. So this is the apex, this is the base. I've mentioned these terms in my previous video. So this is the apex, this is the base. So while talking about coronary arteries, the coronary arteries arise from a single source, and that is the aortic opening. So what is the aortic opening? Aortic, the aorta arises from this part, right? So the aorta is the main artery of the body which supplies, that originates from the heart, and it supplies oxygenated blood throughout the body. So the aorta arises from this part, and it turns like this. So it turns like this. So the point of origin of aorta is called the aortic opening. So let me rub this aorta out because it's not really necessary for the purpose of this video. So this is the aortic opening, the place, the point in the heart surface from which the aorta arises. So in the aortic opening itself, there are two other holes or opening. So this is the anterior aortic opening, and this is the posterior aortic opening. So the anterior aortic opening is towards the front part, then the posterior aortic opening, as the name suggests, towards the back part. So from the anterior aortic opening, what arises? The anterior aortic opening gives birth to the right coronary artery, right one, and the posterior aortic opening gives birth to the left coronary artery. So there are two coronary arteries, right and left. So right and left, there are two coronary arteries. So what you will be asked in exam is that what are the coronary arteries, where do they originate, and where do they go, and where do they terminate. So this is really important in exams. Like this is one of the most important exams. So you have to learn everything about these coronary arteries. So let's start. So the right coronary artery, as I mentioned earlier, originates from the anterior aortic sinus. So this is the anterior aortic sinus. So here the right coronary artery originates. Now it goes along the atrioventricular groove. So it goes along the atrioventricular groove. So what is the atrioventricular groove? I mentioned it in my previous video. So it goes along the atrioventricular groove towards the right border. So this is the right border, at the right border, and when it is going along the atrioventricular groove, in the middle part it gives off a branch that is called the SA nodal branch. So I'll label these branches later on. So it gives up this branch, this one, it is called the SA nodal branch, and as the name suggests, it supplies the SA node, the conducting system of the heart. So it supplies the SA node, so it gives the SA nodal branch, and it continues, and at the right border of the heart it gives another important branch, and that branch is called the right marginal branch. So this one is the right marginal branch. And now at the right border, now the anterior part of the anterior journey of the right coronary artery is like completed. Now it moves towards the posterior side, so it turns and then it goes towards the posterior side along the atrioventricular groove. So it goes towards the posterior side. So this dotted line represents the pathway towards the posterior side. Since this is the anterior view, we cannot see the posterior side, that's why I'm showing it in dotted form. So at the posterior side, the right coronary artery gives another really important branch, and this branch is called the right posterior interventricular branch. So as the name suggests, this branch goes towards the right posterior interventricular branch goes towards the posterior interventricular groove. So what is interventricular groove? I mentioned it in my previous video. So it goes towards the posterior part of the heart along the interventricular groove. So this is the posterior interventricular branch, and then at last it ends at the crux of the heart. So crux of the heart is like kind of like the point where the arterioventricular groove and the interventricular groove meet. So arterioventricular groove are like horizontal around the heart, and the interventricular groove are like vertical around the on the vertical plane of the heart. So this is the point where these two horizontal and this vertical groove, arterioventricular and interventricular groove meet, and this is at the posterior part. So they meet at the posterior part of the heart, and this part is called the crux of the heart. So this right coronary artery ends at the crux of the heart on the posterior side. So let me label these. So all of this is the right coronary artery. So we are talking about the right coronary artery first. So I mentioned these branches. So this is the SA nodal. So this is the SA nodal branch. This is the right marginal branch. This is the SA nodal branch because it supplies the SA node. This is the right marginal branch because it goes along the right margin of the heart, and then it goes backward. It moves towards the posterior side along the arterioventricular groove, and this one, it's really important. This one is the right posterior interventricular branch. So it's a mouthful, but it's like really important. So it has a significant clinical importance. It is like one of the most important branches. I'll talk about the importance later on, but it's like really important. So remember this: right posterior interventricular branch, right coronary artery, posterior towards the posterior side, interventricular branch because it moves along the interventricular groove. So right posterior interventricular branch. So these are the important branches of the right coronary artery. Now let's talk about the left coronary artery. So the left coronary artery arises from the posterior aortic sinus. So this is the anterior aortic sinus. Right coronary artery arises from this one, and the left coronary artery arises from the posterior aortic sinus. So what happens is that it arises at the posterior aortic sinus. It goes along the arterioventricular groove. So remember this is the arterioventricular groove separating the atrium and ventricle. So it immediately goes along the arterioventricular groove, and now at this point it gives like two branches. One of the important branches is this one. So this branch, it gives the anterior descending arterioventricular branch. So this is the anterior descending arterioventricular branch. Anterior because it is towards the front part. It is not, this line is not dotted, right? So anterior interventricular, it goes along the interventricular groove. This is the right ventricle, this is the left ventricle, it goes along the interventricular groove. So interventricular branch. So anterior descending interventricular branch of the left coronary artery. So we are talking about left coronary artery. Now, so after giving this branch, this part, the remaining part is called the circumflex branch. So after giving the anterior interventricular branch, the remaining part is called the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery. Now the circumflex branch moves along the arterioventricular groove, and then it moves towards the posterior side, and then at the crux of the heart, this is the crux of the heart. So at the crux of the heart, anastomosis happens. So anastomosis is basically the clinical term for connection. So it connects with the right coronary artery. So at the crux of the heart, the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery like interconnects with the right coronary artery. So the interconnection is called anastomosis. So an anastomosis happens between the left coronary artery and right coronary artery at the crux of the heart. So that's how the left coronary artery ends. So these are the important branches of the left coronary artery. So now let me label the branches. This one is the left descending interventricular interventricular branch. This is the left descending interventricular branch of the left coronary artery, and the remaining part is called the circumflex artery. So these are the important branches of the coronary arteries. These arteries supply oxygenated blood to the heart muscles.